Good evening and welcome to the May meeting of the Plymouth Township Zoning Hearing Board. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first case on the agenda tonight is the Brixmor Plymouth Square LLC application. Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of Brixmor Plymouth Square LLC. They are seeking a variance from Section 1601D2C of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance to allow a individual tenant wall sign consisting of 94.25 square feet, where only 53 square feet is permitted. Property is located at 200 Ridge Pike in the SC Shopping Center District.
Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Mr. Solicitor. Rob Lewis from Kaplan Stewart on behalf of Brixmor, the owner of the Plymouth Square Shopping Center. I think Mr. Higgins might be the only exception, but I think everybody was here when we were here back in 2022 seeking relief with respect to the rebranding of the entire Plymouth Square Shopping Center. Mr. Higgins, were you on the board? Yeah. Okay. I don't want to bore the board with a really long dissertation of the history of Plymouth Square Shopping Center. I know that in 2022 we went through it. In short, Brixmor purchased the shopping center, I believe in 2021, with the intent of refurbishing the entirety of the shopping center. That included a land development application that included major restoration of the entire shopping center, reconfiguration of significant pieces of the parking lot, Brixmor actually moving their corporate headquarters to the rear of the building. There are some very substantial improvements also to that rear, including bringing some parking online that had always been reserved parking, substantial landscaping improvements, and most importantly, I think from a township perspective, was stormwater management improvements that had never existed on site. 99% of that work is now complete. We came back here in 2022 so that they could take on the aesthetic component of the shopping center, and that was the rebranding. And anybody that's driven by, which I'm sure you probably all do almost every day, if you've driven by or gone by, it looks wonderful. It's a completely different shopping center than it was 4 years ago. Pretty substantial improvements. This evening we're here on a very minor piece of all of that. As you know, the Marshalls space, when you're looking from Ridge Pike, looking at Marshalls and the space that used to be to the left, has undergone a complete tenant change, including obviously a new anchor tenant with PJ Wheelahands going in to the corner. So they have been releasing that former Marshalls space and it has been reconfigured. We have a national tenant, Mattress Warehouse, that is going to occupy a piece of that space, and we are seeking relief for their signage on the front of their building. As with any signage application, it's obviously a challenge to present letter of the law testimony on hardship, but here I do think we have some physical characteristics that warrant the relief that we're seeking this evening. Most notably, you'll see in the exhibits that were attached to the application, as well as in the exhibits that I just handed to you, that space is more than 450 feet. It's almost exactly 500 feet from Ridge Pike. A very substantial distance, obviously, for anybody trying to recognize that Mattress Warehouse is now located in the shopping center. There's obviously a lot of impediments between Ridge Pike and the Mattress Warehouse space that also make it a challenge. And as odd as it is, when you look at the signage that's included, the simple name Mattress Warehouse, by the time you try and take any kind of letter set and spell out Mattress Warehouse, you immediately get over the allotted 53 and change square footage that's permitted. The square footage for signage in the shopping center district is based on your storefront. You get 2 square feet per 1 foot of storefront. And we also do have a unique configuration of our space. You can actually see it if you go out there today. In order to try and add an additional door and vestibule for PJ Wheelahands, The space within the shopping center was arranged slightly different than you would anticipate. What happened is the very front storefront of what used to be a 45-foot leasehold, a portion of that is now occupied by that vestibule serving P.J. Whelihan's. So Mattress Warehouse, although their storefront is only 26 and a half feet wide, the actual leasehold space, as soon as you get past the vestibule, widens out to 45 feet. So we have asked to be able to put up 28-inch letter set for Mattress Warehouse, which Bill Greimel from Brixmor can certainly testify to, is the minimum necessary for us to be able to have visibility from Ridge Pike. But by doing so, by the time you spell out Mattress Warehouse, you're at 94.25 square feet. You can see in the exhibits that I've handed to the board, I think it's Exhibit A4, that signage is certainly in keeping with the shopping center. It is not out of context. It is not out of scale with the shopping center. Brixmor has invested far too much money in this shopping center at this point to risk something not fitting in with the rest of the aesthetic. So unless the board has any immediate questions for me, I would like to have Mr. Greimel sworn in, and I can have him adopt my opening if that's acceptable to you.
William Greimel, Greimel. Yes.
Mr. Lewis, let me ask you very quickly, before you ask Mr. Greimel any questions. You said that the additional door and vestibule for P.J. Whelihan's caused what? What is
So
it?
if you look at Exhibit A4, I believe it's sheet 3 of A4, you'll see the storefront. And on the left-hand side, the storefront for Mattress Warehouse measures today at 26 and a half feet. Because immediately to the left, maybe the second or third, I'm sorry, there we go. Mr. Medioni has it in front of him. So the Mattress Warehouse space, when you look at it on that exhibit, appears to only occupy 26 and a half square feet, or I'm sorry, lineal feet of frontage. But to the left-hand side, you'll see a door and a vestibule. That door and vestibule serves P.J. Whelihan's. Once you get about 20 feet or so in depth into the building, PJ's leasehold ends and Mattress Warehouse takes over. So the width...
Frontage.
Correct.
It reduced the frontage from what to what?
26 and a half, or I'm sorry, from 45 to 26 and a half.
Okay. That helps me. Thank you.
My apologies if that was not clear. Anything else, Mr. Samuel?
Nope. Thank you.
Bill, just very quickly for the record, can you state your position with Brixmor?
Yes, Vice President of Redevelopment,
And how long have you been with Brixmor?
16 years.
And am I correct that you've also been in the shopping center industry substantially longer than that?
Yes, I have.
And you're familiar with Plymouth Square Shopping Center?
Absolutely.
And am I correct that you and I have actually worked on Brixmor's redevelopment of the shopping center since
Yes.
they acquired it?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the space that's the subject of this proceeding?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the plans that I have submitted to the board as applicant's exhibit A4, as well as the site plan A3?
Yes.
Mr. Greimel, you heard my opening to the board and my description of the shopping center. If you were called to testify to the facts that I presented to the board, would you testify to them as I presented them to the board this evening?
Yes.
I made some conclusions based on those facts that the signage relief we're seeking this evening is the minimum necessary for Mattress Warehouse, and that some of the physical circumstances of the property are what necessitate that relief. If you were called to testify to those conclusions, would you testify to them as I presented them to the board this evening?
Yes, I would.
Mr. Greimel, any reason to believe that if the board were inclined to grant our request for relief this evening, that relief would be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare?
No.
Would that relief be detrimental to the appropriate use or enjoyment of adjoining property?
No.
Anything to add or subtract to what I presented to the board this evening?
No.
I don't know if the board has any questions for Mr. Greimel or for me. Happy to certainly answer anything that you may have.
Mr. Higgins? No questions. Mr. Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many hours per day will the sign be illuminated?
Normal working hours.
Okay. In the evening, probably, for people who are going to, like, what are the store hours proposed?
I believe 10 o'clock, but I'm not
Oh,
positive.
until 10 o'clock.
It's not a late night.
Right.
And I believe PJ's right next door will be open later.
Yeah, okay.
Than this space will be.
Okay, that's a good point. No further questions, thank you.
Mr. Perillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of clarifications here. Your request is the minimum needed, right? What's the maximum allowed to make that sign go in there?
53 square feet is what would be permitted.
Size of the letters. What was the size of the letters you quoted?
28-inch letters.
28-inch letters, right?
Yes.
And that's the minimum you need to make it work, correct?
Yes.
So what is the maximum allowed to make it work?
If you do the math, I would guess around 16 inches.
Well, I don't know. You're here. I don't know. I'm
know-
asking you.
I haven't, I would say roughly, I'm not exact, but 16 inches roughly.
Okay, and has that been put on one of the computer design to see if it works? Has it been discussed with the tenant? Where are we at with that part of
Yeah,
it?
and Mr. Peeler, would you like, I'm happy to answer. So we certainly looked at it because we wanted to see if you have 53 square feet, what does it look like? We did have the architect run through that and put it on the building, and it gets lost in the space. And so mattress.
When you
wear-
say, wait, when you say lost in the space, we're talking about looking at this sign from Ridge Avenue. What's your illustration? How many feet?
500 feet.
500 feet. You can't see it at 500 feet?
I don't think you'd be able to read it appropriately at that size.
The
at that
red
distance.
sign with a white background, you won't be able to read that? You sure? I'm just
It-
being devil's advocate here.
And certainly, I think Mr. Graham will share with you that by the time we got from an LOI to a signed lease with Mattress Warehouse, they were insisting that we go to at least a 28-inch letter. They wanted larger, but Bill was able to keep them at 28 inches. That's the smallest we were able to get them to.
Is that
agree to.
documented somewhere?
It's in the lease.
No, that they wanted more.
Yep. Oh.
Well, you're
It's
saying
simply
they
in the
wanted more, and
negotiations.
you're trying to, you're saying that you negotiated it down
Sure.
so you could try to get this
I'm not sure
approval.
if it was in verbal or an email, I'm not sure.
What's their standard size on their other stores?
A lot of stores are 3 foot,
3-foot high letters.
yes.
What's their minimum size?
I'm sorry?
What's their minimum size on
Here
other
it was
stores?
28.
It depends on how far away you are.
So this
from
is,
the
this
road.
will be the smallest size letter on any of their stores.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that was the minimum they would accept from us at this
Based on the
location.
conditions of how far it is, different locations, if your storefront is right up on the road, you don't need as tall letters,
Sure.
okay? This happens to be a tremendous distance, they recognize that. They have stores all over the country, they understand what they need to be, their sign people to be visible at that distance.
Okay, but none of it's in writing. It's all hearsay, right?
Correct. That's what
Okay.
Mr. Grindle does for a living, negotiates with the various tenants, and he's been doing it for a long time.
Okay, how many Mattress Warehouse tenants do you have in your inventory?
I don't know offhand. We have a number of them. We have 400 shopping centers nationwide, and we have them at other locations.
But you don't know what the requirements are, you don't know what their leases are?
Every jurisdiction is going to be different.
I only handle a certain portion of the portfolio.
Okay.
So,
And the last question is, we said that we took frontage away from PJ Wheelhands, or from Mattress Warehouse to give to PJ Wheelhands, right?
Right.
Is PJ Wheelhands using that extra frontage for signage?
I believe that PJ's had to and sought on their own relief for their signage because they have signage on the front and I believe on the rear. We did not do that application. They did that on their own.
Okay, but does it cross over the space that you said you represented that was taken away from Mattress Warehouse so PJ's can have a 20-foot vestibule? And all I'm asking is, if that extra 20-foot or 45-foot frontage, it looks like, was allowed to be Mattress Warehouse, maybe the 28 inches works. I don't know. I'm just trying to find that out.
If PJ Wheelahands did the calculation, that would have counted as their store frontage. But my understanding was that what PJ's had approved also required relief from this board. I did not do that application, so I'm not sure what they requested and what they needed. But PJ's has a through space, so they also were going to have to seek relief, I believe, for the rear of their building as well. Because technically, under your ordinance, anything in the back is not store frontage, so you need relief immediately.
Okay, but I don't want to get away from the vestibule question. You represented that the 45 foot of frontage for their
Yep.
vestibule is probably the reason why that you're coming in for this variance,
Agreed.
right? And I'm trying to find out, well, are they using that frontage for signage? And if they aren't, and you were able to, would it work at 28? And if you didn't do the calculations, that's
did.
fine.
Well, we normally don't have signs go over and into another.
And that's not where the question's really coming from. It's really is, if you didn't give them that vestibule, Mattress Warehouse would have that
It would be
frontage.
very close as far as the calculations. I mean, within very, very close.
You have those calculations?
If Mattress Warehouse had a standard leasehold that came out and had its 45 feet of width all the way out to the storefront, they would be
Right.
permitted 90 square feet. Our sign is 94.25 square feet. At that point,
We're good. Thank you.
yeah.
And what's really driving it, if I could mention, is the distance from the Ridge Pike and being able to visualize,
Sure,
see
it's all the way in the
those letters.
back. It's behind the
Yeah.
parking lots,
Yeah.
basically.
I think if you spoke to a sign vendor and what they use as far as their rules of thumb, I mean, as you get further and further from the highway, the sign needs to be bigger.
And normally the sign vendor comes in on a
This was more of a
request
lease.
like this.
Understood. And there are times that I think a sign vendor is the appropriate person to have testify here, but here I thought it was more appropriate to have the Brixmor representative
Okay.
with us this evening.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramondo.
So this sign is only going to stay on the 29 feet or whatever?
26 and a half.
26 and a half feet. It's not going to bleed over to the other, it's going to stay on its...
Correct. As depicted in Exhibit A4, it stays on their space.
No further questions.
Thank you.
I have just a question related but unrelated. What happened with the veterinary hospital?
I believe that the appeal, that we have withdrawn our case, and so the neighbors have been successful in thwarting that use.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Is this taking that space?
We're working, we've got a couple of tenants.
No, he's asking
Is
if
this
this Mattress
taking the
Warehouse.
veterinary space?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Is this space
This is
going where the
Regis
veterinary
space.
hospital was going to go?
No, no.
That's what I was wondering, because I know it was right in that general area.
Yeah, that's on the other side of
No, I meant that they could-
the Salon Suites. So we're in between that and Planet Fitness.
I just couldn't remember exactly where. And this will be, what, backlit?
Internal illumination,
That was my question.
which, and the details of that are included in Exhibit A4.
Understood. I have no further questions. Mr.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the light, internal illumination, and we're talking about off at 10 p.m.
Usually it's an
Roughly.
hour
I don't
after
want
close,
to,
yes.
I don't want to have it,
But
An hour
so
after.
is there an ordinance within the town that we just stay with that?
Mr. Cinder, I would suggest that the condition read within an hour after close of business hours. If business hours are 10 o'clock, that usually allows staff enough time to get out. They're kind of turning the sign off on their way out of the building. That would be a standard for illumination.
There is reasonable lighting in the parking lot.
There is.
Look, got PJ Wellhands open a lot of
That's
times
for sure.
later.
Yeah.
Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this application?
Just have two questions.
Come on up and be sworn in. And it's comment, so
Hi, Craig Fox.
address.
105 Pine Tree Lane, Plymouth Meeting.
Swear me.
Raise your right hand. Do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and
Yes. If I could show you this picture. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, it would be stacked one over the other.
no, it's really public
It's
comment.
public comment, it's not,
Yeah.
you're not here to
Oh,
question
okay.
him.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
No, that's all right.
Well, public comment, I'm just trying to get an idea by showing this picture.
Well, you got to
This-
direct your comments to the board, please.
trying to get an idea if this is what you believe the picture is supposed to be. I haven't seen it, so
Here's
the
the picture.
description was,
This is
so
what it looks like.
it was not on top of it. Okay.
No.
And I can't tell if this is the same size either.
I have no idea where that's from, if you want to identify.
I don't know, I just sat there and Googled it just to get an idea because I couldn't understand your presentation sitting back there without a picture and to
Well, we have
figure out the
plenty of
size of it.
pictures.
Pardon me?
We have plenty of wonderful pictures back here.
That's good.
Look at us.
You know, you asked the audience if we had any and I didn't have any. So I can't tell if this is what they were talking about. So yours is going across, and this is going across, this is going up and down, and you can't go across, or can they not go across?
They only have 26 feet in front.
They want it bigger, so they have bigger ridge pipe.
That's it.
Anything further? No. Anyone else? Anything further from the board? Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant a variance from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 16, Section 1601, point D to C, to permit an individual tenant wall sign is 94.25 square feet, where 53 square feet is permitted at the property located at 200 Ridge Pike and Shopping Center zoning district, to be undertaken in compliance with the evidence and testimony offered this evening.
Did you give a turn-off time?
The sign should turn off by an hour after closing, which is presumably 11 p.m.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Vote. Mr. Higgins?
In favor.
Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Freeling?
In favor.
Mr. Armando?
In favor.
Chair votes in favor. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Next.
Thank you, sir.
You want these back?
Thank you.
Home
Doesn't burn
Depot.
well, it burns good.
Good job. Good job.
Home Depot is next.
Is this Home Depot next?
Home Depot.
Mr. Chairman, this case was opened on the record on April 15th, 2024, and continued on the record to this evening. This is the application of Home Depot, Katie Fitzgerald, for a variance from Section 3710A of the zoning ordinance, required parking for retail sales and service uses, 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross leasable floor area is required. The applicant is seeking a variance to allow 41, actually now 34 less parking spaces than are required at this location. The property is located at 200 Allenwood Road in the Business Park zoning district.
You are.
Good evening. My name is Dan Rowley with the law firm of Saul Ewing. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, which is Home Depot USA Incorporated. Our zoning application that brings us here tonight can be found in Exhibit A1 in your packets.
Excuse me. Do you have somebody from Home Depot with you?
We do.
Okay, I was wondering who was here.
Sure. Yeah, so just to introduce you to our witnesses, Collins Polywax, who is with Home Depot, and Jennifer Altman, who is our civil engineer for the project.
Let me ask, Mr. Chairman, is there anybody here who has any interest in this case? Anybody wishes to become a party to this case? Hearing none, Mr. Rowley can proceed.
Sure. I'm not sure if I identified this exhibit yet, but Exhibit A2 is the deed for the property that evidences our standing to bring the application found in Exhibit A1. As I stated, my client's Home Depot USA Incorporated, the owner of the Home Depot located at 200 Allenwood Road in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. Subject property is about 3.85 acres in size. It's utilized as a Home Depot, and the property is zoned in the Business Park District. So tonight, in connection with the existing use of the property, Home Depot is proposing to expand its existing outdoor storage capacity by utilizing an existing paved area of the property as outdoor storage, which was previously utilized as a portion of the parking lot. The property is currently overparked, and there is a significant amount of impervious coverage on the property, and it lacks any reasonable alternative areas for additional storage. As part of our application, we are requesting a variance from Code 3710A to provide 1,634 parking spaces, where 1,669 parking spaces exist and 1,668 parking spaces are required. This is a variance for 34 parking spaces. As you may notice, this is slightly different than what was requested, the 41 parking space variance in Exhibit A1. This is because since the filing of this application, our project team has redesigned the project to reduce the degree of the variance and to address comments, feedback of township staff, the township solicitor, and the planning agency. We met with the planning agency. We've separately met with the zoning officer, the township solicitor, and we believe the redesign of the project met all of their feedback, comments, which we can get to.
Mr. Rowley, before you go on, can you give me those numbers again? You are requesting 1,634 spaces, where how many exist and how many are required?
1,669 exist and 1,668 are required. So there's one additional over the requirement.
Thank you.
So the project contemplates a reasonable extension of the existing use of the property and is suitable for the property. There are no other areas of the property conducive to outdoor storage. This type of storage is industry standard for home improvement stores, and the physical circumstances of the property create an unnecessary hardship, preventing this reasonable expansion of the use. As I mentioned, I do have two witnesses with me this evening. I'll leave it up to the discretion of the board. I can walk you through the exhibits and make an offer of proof. I can also call my witnesses individually.
I would prefer to do an offer of proof.
Sure.
I see no, the witness gets sworn in, obviously. but-
Yeah, and I will have them each sworn in and open for any questions.
Sure.
So I brought you through the first two exhibits. A3 is an aerial of the property. It's actually two aerials of the property. The second page is a little bit larger, zoomed in, of the Home Depot store to show you exactly where it is located and how it is oriented currently. Exhibit A4 shows some of these existing outdoor storage areas. Again, there's two existing photos in here. The first shows some of the outdoor storage area. There's primarily grills and propane there. And then the second page is outside of the garden center, where there is live goods and other outdoor materials. Exhibit A5, this is, again, two photos. This is the Lowe's located off of Chemical Road in Plymouth Township. They do a very similar outdoor storage system. You can see here there's two full rows of parking with similar storage to what we're proposing. And prior to today's meeting, I went through these photos and the Google areas of that Lowe's, and approximately they're utilizing 48 parking spaces for their storage capacity, their outdoor storage. Exhibit A6, this is the site plan that was submitted with our application, our original design. You can see the permanent outdoor storage of mulch, soil, and live goods that was located in front of the garden center and took two rows of parking at the very front. We'll get to the revised plan in a second.
Does live goods means plants?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
So that was primarily the area that was moved as part of our revisions to the plan, which we'll get to now at Exhibit A7. So there, you can see we reoriented it and we put it in a single file line of parking just to take up one parking. The primary comments we received from township staff was they did not like that parking in front of the garden center, those 2 rows. They thought there was potential visibility concerns, and that was kind of more prime parking areas, and they wanted to see us move back towards the rear of the parking lot where there are less used spaces. Really, that row is pretty rarely used in general that we're proposing for the outdoor storage, and we kept it in a single file line there. And that also helped us reduce the degree of the variance from getting 41 parking spaces to 34. Exhibit A8 is the CV of our civil engineer, Jennifer Altman, with Kinley Horn. And then Exhibit A9 is a zoning officer review letter for the original design at A6. And again, we received this letter, we went through it, we tried to incorporate and address them as best we could. We set up, after the planning agency meeting, we set up a meeting with both the solicitor and the zoning officer where we presented our revised plans and went through all of the comments in the review letter. And the feedback we received back is that our revised plan addressed all of their comments and issues in A9. So those are our exhibits. I can call Mr. Polywax to be sworn.
Collins,
Polywax. Last name, P-O.
Both names.
Yep, C-O-L-L-I-N-S, P-O-L-Y-W-A-C as in cat, C as in Tina.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Collins, can you state your name for the record?
Yep, Collins, Polywax,
And by whom are you employed?
the Home Depot,
And what's your position at Home Depot?
the store manager
And that's the store manager for the subject?
for that specific location of 200 Allen Road, yes.
And how long have you been employed at Home Depot?
19 years.
And in your employment at Home Depot, you're familiar with the operations of the Home Depot that's the subject of this application, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did you hear my testimony and opening statements regarding this application?
Yes, I did.
And did you hear me identify the exhibits and walk through the exhibits for you?
Yes.
Was my testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
And would you adopt my testimony as your own tonight?
Yes, I will.
I don't have any further questions for Mr. Polywax.
Anybody have any? Mr. Higgins, do you have any questions? Mr. Daly?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Freeling?
Sorry, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of clarifications. You had said that the township asked you to relocate the parking to the rear of the lot for better visibility. And what I'm looking at, it looks like you put it in front of the main entrance.
That's the old
That's the
plan,
old
though.
plan, that was the
Yeah,
original.
so
See what's down there, though?
A7 is
The revised into a straight
It's a straight line. All the things are in a
Oh,
straight
are
line.
they said?
Yeah, it's right there.
My apologies.
Absolutely.
So now you're in a straight line, okay.
Correct.
And what you showed in your illustrations for Lowe's, is that permanent or is that temporary storage?
I believe it's temporary seasonal, but Collins, do you know?
I don't know if that's temporary or permanent.
Okay.
Over my time, I have not seen that. So.
Yeah, I've never seen that before, maybe once or twice. And then
And
you're
just,
talking about
so-
permanent storage, right?
So if I could just address the
Sure.
last issue. I know in my conversations with township staff and the township solicitor, it was relayed to me. We did submit a right to know for this property, but not the Lowe's, that they did get similar relief in the past. I don't know the extent of that. That's just what was relayed to me by the township. But you mentioned, is this permanent? Collins, do you want to address that?
So the idea is for our business, we're in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, where the spring season, the summer season is more robust, that it would be that back half of that plan where it is the second color shade and then the third color shade, which is soils and mulches and fence panels, that would go from early March to pretty much the beginning of September. So they would revert back to regular parking spots. Obviously, we're not selling those goods at that time. when you talk from September through March.
So there is a seasonal portion to it, component to it.
And that's the ones in the back.
Yep,
But you're going to have permanent sheds in the front.
correct.
And the township's okay with that? With the permanent sheds in the front, after they asked you to move it to the back? Like, the permanent sheds are always going to be there, correct?
Correct.
You can't go out there with a forklift or a pallet truck and just move them?
I mean, they could be moved. The concern is where does that end up on the footprint of the store?
Well, I just thought the blue would be flipped to the back.
So there, Collins, is there some?
And some other commentary to that is, a couple of the concerns that came up was how we create a relief across the front of a store. Right now, they're loading right there at the front of the store, and that's causing fire lane issues, and that was the fire marshal's concern as well. So we put display sheds at the front, knowing that there would be no loading. To accommodate that part and then push further back and load in parking spots and not through drive lanes, that we would load towards the back of the store, or the back of the parking lot, I'm sorry.
And who are we talking about loading? Home Depot or customers?
Same, Home Depot or customers.
Okay. So the permanent structures will be in the front of the parking lot? No more questions, thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Lamond?
So how are they going to be secure? Like in a fence box, or like what's the? Like, is it just how are they placed?
The sheds themselves,
Well, the whole situation, is it going to be secure, like locked at night, or like how do you?
we've talked through that. There are camera systems to allow that for us. The fence panels at the back would be under lock and key. So a Home Depot representative would have to unlock it. There's no way.
Like in a cage?
That was the other suggestion too. We've worked with Katie on our side is that we could provide caging or fencing to enclose the whole thing.
Well, what's your other options? Like just lock them up separately with like cables? Like, you know what I mean? I
The
just want
soils and mulches we would not be able to lock. right?
so
that's
they're not like behind them. They're just piled there.
correct, and that's common across other Home Depots.
Yeah.
But our concern would be we would use the camera system to identify those opportunities.
You have lighting on at night
Mhm.
for that?
Parking lot is there,
Parking lot is lit
and it's lit
throughout the
24/7.
night?
And part of the redesign, and the original design was keeping security camera visibility as, keeping that in mind. So this would all be visible to the security cameras.
So it's going to be live goods, meaning trees, plants, and then mulch and dirt and maybe stone, and then sheds, grills.
No grills.
Okay.
It's really trying to stay towards those that are listed of just the sheds, the soils and mulches, and the fencing.
Fencing.
So there could be a possibility of live goods of, think of like these big holidays like Mother's Day. That would be maybe an extra storage part of bringing some of those.
So any tenting or any permanent building type structures?
Like I said, we worked on our side through Katie that we would provide if needed of a fence to enclose the soils and mulches.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would be fencing that would be labeled as Home Depot fencing,
Right.
so it wouldn't just be like a chain link, it would be,
It'd
So
be secure.
so the storage takes up those parking spots, and then access to that storage, does that take up that driving row?
Well,
Like-
that was one of the concerns that we're trying to address as well as those parking spots further back where the mulch and the fence panels are. Those parking spots are not being used across from that drive lane.
Right, but I mean, cars can't go driving right past all this stuff, right? Are you going to shut that lane down as well for loading and unloading?
No, we would not shut that.
But that'll still be open for driving through it?
Sorry, Collins.
No.
But one of the original concerns, if you look at A6, was the green and the pink kind of across from
Right.
each other, which would essentially
Shut that lane.
either shut that lane down or you would have people loading in the drive aisle.
Yeah.
So with A7, we tried to eliminate that concern. That was a concern raised by the township.
All right.
And we tried to eliminate that in A7 by keeping it in a single row and having open parking across. So if I was to buy
Okay.
2 bags of mulch, I could park directly across from where the mulch is
Got it.
and load it into my parked vehicle.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sure.
What is the height?
Height of what?
The height of what you're proposing? You've got
So
3
the-
rows of stuff, how high are they gonna be?
Sure, and that was another comment from the township, and we added a note in, if you look at A7 on the mulch, mulch, outdoor storage, live goods, not to exceed 6 feet in height.
What about the storage sheds you have?
We would work with a vendor because there are not storage sheds on the site currently. We go to that site.
They're not storage sheds?
We do not have display storage sheds at our store.
Well, then what is,
Those would be new storage shed displays to showcase what we do offer.
Yeah,
So right now, there's not a visible display for our customers.
So that would be new. So they're,
well, what are they anticipated to be in height when they arrive, I guess?
I mean, it'd still be within that standard of that 6 foot, as far as I am aware of.
6 foot in height?
High?
They've done small garden sheds and various things at different stores.
Can I ask a question?
I mean, if you're willing to be bound by 6 foot height for any of this storage, then just let us know and we'll make that
Provided. Condition.
conditional. yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
So part of the difficulty in answering the height of the shed question is they don't currently have those displays at their current store. So this would be a new feature.
I'm sure they're at some Home Depot somewhere.
I'm sure there are. We just don't have direct knowledge to that based on this Home Depot because they've never used that.
Well, I think the height's a legitimate issue to raise and then try and understand, because if it's too high, you defeat the purpose of having the straight line then.
Right.
Because you again obscure the vision, you're right up at the front.
Right, what if this shed right here is 20 feet high? You can't see coming around
It's the same reason why they moved the, this back, yeah. I mean,
I can have Jennifer maybe talk about that. She wasn't sworn in.
she can
yet,
be
so
sworn
maybe-
in and testify.
Right.
Good question.
So maybe we'll have Jennifer sworn in.
Well, while we're on the chairman's
I'll get you.
question,
Sure.
what about you can stack fencing panels? How high would they be limited to 6 feet?
that would be limited to 6 feet. We have a safety standard that we would not stack fence panels over 6 feet.
Are we sworn in?
State your name.
Jennifer Oltman, O-L-T-M-A-N.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you will not shoot or shoot the truth.
Yes. I would want to confirm with Home Depot, but the storage sheds, based on some of the other properties that we do work on, would vary in height because they come in different sizes, from small sheds to large sheds. Typically, some of the sheds that you can enter in, so they would be taller than an average person, but probably 8 feet in height. If that is, we would want to probably confirm that with the vendors, like he stated. But if there was a restriction on that, I'm sure Home Depot would absolutely agree to that restriction as well.
Because I'm looking at this, and one of the reasons why they suggested the straight line was to eliminate the height blocking the entrance. Well, if you again have a very large, tall shed there, that could cause problems with visibility trying to make the turn and stuff like that. So, knowing how tall the shed is, I think is important.
Can you answer that?
So I'm going to pass out we'll mark this as Exhibit A10. This is photos of the Home Depot in Willow Grove, which have similar sheds to what we're proposing, and they're doing a similar outdoor.
Yeah, and if you observe in the photograph, they are varying in height because, so there are ones that are smaller, there's one in this photograph that is a larger. Sorry about that.
That's probably a 12-foot ceiling.
Mr. Aprilli, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple things, and I apologize. When you said storage sheds, I thought you were putting permanent sheds there to store stuff in.
For display of.
But these are display sheds, which is fully understandable. And I guess, and you just answered the question with this diagram. You have the largest shed. What's the largest shed size that you could sell through Home Depot?
The size of a house. Like, I mean,
They don't, you're not displaying.
right.
The township code is 12 by 12.
Correct.
So if you get a 12 by 12 shed, your ceiling is going to be probably 12, could be higher, if you buy the
Right, they're
the
storing
farmhouse
as
style.
a model, so they're not storing multiples of these. You can't just pick it up. It was
Right.
something on order.
It's only display.
It's only for display so that you could see it and pick out which one that you want. So you would be seeing something similar to what is here at this Home Depot.
Okay, and is there any reason, if you have them in a straight line, the mulch and the fence couldn't be in the front to the store and the shed displays could be in the back of the parking lot? So now you have your height all the way in the back, and it's not going to obstruct anything in the front of the store.
Understood. And some of that was to kind of also give the spaces back off of the season, right? So that was the reason of putting mulch towards the back with the fence panels. The other part was the mulch pallet is literally 6 foot high, so that was a concern too, making sure that was further back.
And also for the safety issue of putting the mulch closer.
Well, but if the mulch is 6 foot high and the shed could potentially be 12 foot high, what do you want closer?
Understood. And then the other concern that came up through the township was the loading aspect.
Yeah.
So
So
if
the-
we put
the
those
safety
goods at
of
the front,
traffic.
then we would create a bottleneck on that corner where BJ's is as well. So that was a concern too. Was putting that
So you
back.
don't take those pallets of mulch when you run low in the backyard and bring them back there for people to grab them?
We do, and that's part of the customer service aspect that we're trying to as well as the safety concern.
So really, the only loading out in the parking lot will be your forklift picking up a pallet and driving it into the
We would
backyard?
not load that way in the parking lot. Our safety standards, we would not be loading in the parking lot with a forklift. This would all be hand
To
loaded.
be loaded into a vehicle.
Yep.
No, I understand that, but I thought when you buy mulch at Home Depot, you put it on your cart from the back side yard, the garden yard.
Yes.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is, if you're running low on inventory in that back, you send your guy out with a pallet truck or a forklift, he picks up a pallet and he drives it back to the garden yard,
Yep.
and you replenish your inventory.
Yes, you're.
Nobody's loading, no customers are loading from that pallet, just Home Depot employees. Is that not how your system works?
Is this where you would store your
So
inventory?
that is really to load customers'
Customers,
vehicles.
right, correct. You have another space where you would store inventory.
Customers drive and pick it up, Tom.
I think it would be
Okay.
the opposite of what you said.
Yeah,
You'd
they
be
would-
replenishing this if it was running low.
They would park directly across, and it could be loaded into their parked vehicle.
Okay,
This is for the customer experience. So they're not
Okay.
storing their entirety of their inventory in this location.
okay. So how about the tallest shed you could sell that would be on display?
And that's, like I said before, I'm not trying to, like, we would work with our vendor because we may not offer that shed, knowing that the concern of the height. So we wouldn't put a 12-foot tall shed in the front. We would work with that vendor. So they offer 1,000 different shed styles and varieties. That's where we would work with them not to.
Okay. And what was the height that you had proposed? Were you proposing a size?
We did, but we can work with the board. If there is a restriction on that height, then that is something that they will be restricted to. Because as you can see, there are 6-foot sheds and there are ones that are larger.
Sure.
They could only display the ones that are appropriate for the variance.
What about?
Thank you.
You said 8 feet, so,
I believe she said 8 to 10 was.
oh, I thought she said
Right, or no?
8 feet,
I did say 8 to 10.
8 to 10, so that's 10. Just want the board to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understood. My apologies if that was incorrect.
And would you make sure that you provide a clear sight triangle so that at that front there where you
Yes,
have Home
to
Depot?
Colin's point, that is what we were noting, that we would have them toward the back, so they would not be affecting any intersection traffic, and then we'd also provide clear sight to make sure that we were not affecting any turning radius or anything of that nature.
Right. And this, the A7 revised plan was reviewed by the fire marshal as well. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but it was reviewed by the fire marshal and we received no further comments.
Any further questions from the board? Mr. Sander?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did have one that came up. So the fence panels that you're going to store, would people be transferring those into their cars as well?
Right. Home Depot representative would help load. Obviously, the
Okay.
size of the fence panel is pretty wide.
Okay. And just want to be clear, did we establish a maximum height for the sheds?
10 feet.
10 feet, okay.
Shed's 10, the other two 6.
Okay.
Fence panel 6, and mulch and live goods 6.
Okay.
So we're not double stacking mulch, right? Fence panels are 6, they are 6.
Yeah, and about how many sheds would you be able to accommodate within that blue area? How many demo sheds?
10 spots.
Depending on the size from that vendor, we'd say probably between 6 to 8.
Okay.
And I think we were just kind of talking about, we would obviously start with the lower size shed and work towards the back as a taller shed.
Okay.
To that 10-foot variance that you got.
Okay, great, thank you. No further questions, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody from the public wish to comment on this application? Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. If I can find my... Okay, to grant a variance from, to grant variances from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 37, Section 3710A, to allow a parking reduction of 36 spaces?
34.
34 spaces, to allow for outside storage on site. It is understood there was a previous variance that allowed for 15 spaces to be utilized for rentals, and the new slots will be allocated. We'll reallocate those spaces toward the variance. They are also the storage area, the property rather, is located at 200 Allenwood Road in Business Park zoning district. Condition on the new storage locations will be the largest shed to be stored to be on demonstration be no higher than 10 feet, and the other areas, the fencing panel and mulch storage areas should be no higher than 6 feet. All of this to be undertaken in conformity with the testimony and exhibits offered this evening.
And to have a clear sight triangle.
To have a clear sight triangle too at the where the shed at the shed storage location. Correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I hope that covered everything.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Higgins?
In favor.
Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Aprile?
In favor.
Mr. Raimondo?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last is 2368 Hickory Road.
You can have it back if you want.
Sure, I will take them back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Again, 2368
Thank you.
Hickory Road.
Yeah, I keep it.
I don't think we have anybody.
There appears to be no applicant here.
Yeah, is there an applicant? Is the applicant Leslie Heller or the Ann Hopper Trust present this evening?
Oh, man.
Mr. Chairman, seeing that there is no applicant here, I would recommend that the board deny the application based on the failure to prosecute.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deny the application on the failure to prosecute.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Let's have a vote. Mr. Higgins? In favor. Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Aprile?
In favor.
Mr. Raimondo?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor.
Grant.